Hello everyone. Today we will delve into Arthur Schopenhauer's ebook, The Art of Always Being Correct. Overview. The philosopher we're dissecting today wasn't exactly your sunshine and rainbows kind of guy. Born in 1788 in Germany, he was known for his pessimism and his belief that life was ultimately a pretty miserable affair. Chuckles, well, he wasn't exactly the life of the gathering. But his ideas were influential. Schopenhauer challenged the optimism of thinkers like Immanuel Kant and argued that our desires and wants, rather than reason, drive most of our actions. This constant striving, he believed, led only to suffering. So, a philosopher who wasn't a big fan of people or happiness? Pretty much. But he wasn't all doom and gloom. Schopenhauer believed in the power of art and reason as ways to escape the cycle of suffering. Interesting. So, this book on a winning argument seems a bit out of character for this guy who values reason, right? Exactly. That's what makes The Art of Always Being Right so fascinating. It's a cynical peek into the manipulative side of human interaction, even from a philosopher who championed reason. Introduction. A Philosopher Schoenhauser, The Art of Always Being Right, Analysis of 10 Strategies, In this ebook, we delve into the mind of the enigmatic philosopher Schoenhauser, a master of argument and persuasion. Schoenhauser's philosophy revolves around the concept of always being right, not through brute force or manipulation, but through strategic maneuvering and a keen understanding of human psychology. This ebook will dissect 10 of Schoenhauser's most potent strategies, analyzing their effectiveness and underlying principles. By understanding these strategies, you'll gain valuable insights into the art of argumentation and how to navigate conversations with confidence. Chapter 1: The Power of Framing. Imagine two headlines for the same news story. Headline 1: Government announces stricter food safety regulations. Headline 2: Government bureaucracy stifles innovation in food industry. Both headlines convey the same basic information: the government is implementing new food safety regulations. However, the framing of this information drastically alters how the reader interprets it. This is the essence of Schoenhauser's philosophy on framing. He argues that the way we present information, the frame we choose, has a profound impact on how people perceive and respond to it. Framing techniques. Schoenhauser identifies several key framing techniques that can be used to shape an audience's perspective. Emphasis framing. This technique involves highlighting particular aspects of an issue. Highlighting the positive outcomes of a policy, e.g., safer food in headline 1, creates a more favorable impression, de-emphasizing framing. Conversely, de-emphasizing framing downplays potential drawbacks. In headline 2, bureaucracy casts the regulations in a negative light, while innovation evokes positive connotations. Loss aversion framing. People are more sensitive to potential losses than gains. Framing an issue as a potential loss, e.g., if we don't tighten regulations, there could be another foodborne illness outbreak, can be a powerful persuasive tool. Gain framing. Highlighting potential gains can also be effective. Framing a new technology as a time saver emphasizes its benefits, while framing it as a job displacement risk focuses on potential downsides. Real-world examples. Schoenhauser's framing techniques are evident in various real-world scenarios. Political campaigns. Politicians often frame their opponents' policies negatively, de-emphasis, while emphasizing the benefits of their own proposals, emphasis. Advertising. Advertisers frame products as solutions to problems, loss aversion, or pathways to a better life, gain framing. Public health campaigns. Campaigns promoting healthy eating might frame it as investing in your health, gain, or avoiding future health problems, loss. Ethical considerations. While framing is a powerful tool, ethical considerations are crucial. Misrepresentation. Framing shouldn't distort facts or mislead the audience. Manipulation. Using framing solely to manipulate people's emotions without providing a balanced perspective is unethical. Transparency. It's often beneficial to acknowledge different frames surrounding an issue, fostering a more nuanced understanding. Conclusion. Understanding the power of framing equips you to be a more discerning audience member. By being aware of framing techniques, you can analyze information critically and avoid being swayed solely by the way it's presented. Additionally, by thoughtfully framing your own arguments, you can communicate your ideas more effectively and shape the conversation in a constructive way. Remember, framing is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or manipulation. Use it ethically and with a clear understanding of the message you want to convey. Chapter 2: The Art of Asking Questions. The unexamined life is not worth living, as Socrates famously declared. Schoenhauser, a keen student of history, takes this notion to heart. He recognizes the power of well-crafted questions to not only illuminate truths but also subtly steer conversations in his favor. Why questions matter. Unlike forceful statements, questions can disarm opponents and plant seeds of doubt. They nudge the conversation in a desired direction without appearing overly assertive. Here's how Schoenhauser utilizes the art of asking questions. Socratic questioning. This method involves asking a series of probing questions that challenge assumptions and lead the answerer to reach their own conclusions, often aligning with Schoenhauser's desired outcome. Imagine a discussion about gun control. Schoenhauser might ask, do you believe everyone deserves to feel safe in their homes? Or what role should responsible gun ownership play in ensuring public safety? These questions prompt introspection and subtly guide the conversation towards a framework that supports gun control. Leading questions. These questions nudge the respondent towards a specific answer. For example, instead of asking, do you think this policy is effective? Schoenhauser might ask, wouldn't it be better if this policy addressed the X issue as well? The phrasing subtly suggests a specific answer. Hypothetical scenarios. Posing hypothetical situations can help illustrate the potential consequences of a particular course of action. Schoenhauser might ask, imagine if this regulation weren't in place, what could happen? This prompts the listener to consider the downsides of opposing his view. Rhetorical devices. Schoenhauser uses rhetorical devices to enhance the impact of his questions. Loaded questions. These questions contain an assumption intended to be persuasive. For instance, when will we finally stop this reckless spending, assumes that the spending is indeed reckless. False dilemmas. These questions present a situation with only two options, when in reality there might be more. Schoenhauser might ask, do you want to be safe or be free? This forces the listener to choose between two extremes, potentially overlooking more nuanced positions. The power of silence. Schoenhauser understands the power of silence as well. After posing a well-crafted question, he allows silence to linger, creating a space for contemplation and encouraging the listener to elaborate on their answer. This silence can be particularly effective after a leading question, as the listener might feel compelled to fill the void and unknowingly provide the desired response. Ethical considerations. While asking questions is a powerful strategy, ethical considerations are important. Avoid manipulation. Questions shouldn't be used solely to manipulate the conversation or exploit the listener's vulnerabilities. Balanced inquiry. It's important to ask questions that explore all sides of an issue, not just those that support Schoenhauser's position. Open-mindedness. A genuine desire to understand the other person's perspective strengthens the conversation and fosters mutual respect. Conclusion. By mastering the art of asking questions, Schoenhauser demonstrates that effective communication isn't just about making pronouncements but also about guiding the conversation and prompting thoughtful reflection. By understanding these techniques, you can become a more persuasive communicator and engage in more meaningful dialogue. Remember, questions are powerful tools. Use them ethically, thoughtfully, and with the goal of fostering genuine understanding. Chapter 3: The Appeal to Authority, Borrowing Strength from the Giants. Schoenhauser firmly believes that a well-placed appeal to authority can be a persuasive powerhouse. In arguments, lending credibility to your claims is crucial, and citing respected sources can significantly strengthen your position. This chapter delves into Schoenhauser's strategies for using authority effectively while also emphasizing the importance of critical evaluation. The power of authority. Humans are naturally inclined to trust figures perceived as knowledgeable and experienced. By citing experts, historical figures, or even impressive statistics, Schoenhauser leverages this inherent trust to bolster his arguments. Here's how he utilizes this strategy. Expert opinions. Schoenhauser strategically quotes relevant experts in the field under discussion. When arguing for stricter environmental regulations, he might cite a renowned climate scientist's research on the urgency of the situation. Historical precedent. Drawing on historical events can lend weight to an argument. Discussing the success of a similar policy in another country strengthens the case for its implementation here. Statistics and data. Statistics can be powerful tools for persuasion. Schoenhauser uses credible data sources to support his claims and illustrate trends or patterns. Different types of authority. Not all authority figures hold equal weight. Here's how Schoenhauser selects the most effective sources. Relevance. The cited authority must be an expert in the specific field under discussion. Citing a renowned economist wouldn't hold much sway in a debate about astrophysics. Credibility. The source of information should be reputable and trustworthy. Schoenhauser verifies the credentials of experts and the accuracy of statistics before using them. Objectivity. It's important to consider the potential biases of the source. Schoenhauser might cite studies from various institutions to present a more balanced perspective. Beyond just names. Simply dropping names isn't enough. Schoenhauser effectively utilizes authority by explaining the source, briefly explaining the expert's qualifications or the source of the data adds context and strengthens the appeal. Interpreting the information. Schoenhauser doesn't just quote blindly, he interprets the information in the context of his argument, ensuring the audience understands its relevance. The importance of critical evaluation. While authority figures can be persuasive, critical thinking is essential. Schoenhauser encourages his audience to evaluate the source, ask questions about the expert's credentials, potential biases, and the methodology behind any cited studies. Consider counterarguments. Are there opposing views from equally qualified experts? A balanced perspective strengthens the overall argument. Think for yourself. Don't blindly accept information at face value. Analyze the evidence and draw your own conclusions. Conclusion. The appeal to authority is a valuable tool in Schoenhauser's arsenal. By strategically citing credible sources and fostering critical thinking in his audience, he elevates his arguments and promotes informed discourse. Remember, authority figures can enhance your arguments, but don't become a crutch. Develop your own understanding of the issues and encourage your audience to do the same. Chapter 4. The advantage of conceding ground. Sometimes, retreating leads to victory. Schoenhauser's philosophy on argumentation might surprise some. He readily acknowledges that conceding minor points, strategically, of course, can be a powerful tool. This chapter delves into the surprising effectiveness of conceding ground and explores the psychology behind this technique. Why concede? In a heated debate, conceding ground might seem counterintuitive. However, Schoenhauser recognizes the benefits. Disarming opponents. Starting with a concession can disarm your opponent. They might be caught off guard by your apparent willingness to agree, making them less defensive and more open to your perspective. Building rapport. Acknowledging some validity in your opponent's argument fosters a sense of respect and understanding. This creates a more positive atmosphere for discussion, increasing the chance of a productive outcome. Strengthening your core argument. By conceding minor points, you focus the conversation on your core argument, the one that truly matters. This allows you to present your main point with greater emphasis and clarity. Boosting credibility. Conceding demonstrates intellectual honesty and a willingness to see the other side. This can enhance your overall credibility and make your arguments more persuasive. The psychology of concession. Concession works because it taps into several psychological principles. Reciprocity. People tend to reciprocate concessions. If you concede a point, they might be more likely to do the same, opening doors for compromise. Cognitive dissonance. People strive for consistency in their beliefs. If you acknowledge some validity in their argument, it creates a cognitive dissonance for them, potentially leading them to reevaluate their own position slightly to maintain consistency. Underdog effect. Sometimes, appearing slightly less confident initially can backfire. However, conceding strategically can create an underdog effect, making your arguments seem more reasonable and gaining the audience's sympathy. How to concede effectively. Conceding ground requires finesse. Here are some tips from Schoenhauser's playbook. Be selective. Don't concede core points. The concessions should be peripheral or minor aspects of the overall argument. Frame your concessions. Frame your concessions to strengthen your main argument. For example, I understand your concern about X, but have you considered Y? Control the flow. Don't get bogged down in the conceded points. After acknowledging them, skillfully shift the conversation back to your central argument. Case study. Imagine a debate about implementing stricter environmental regulations. Schoenhauser might concede, I understand the concerns about the potential impact on businesses. However, the long-term costs of inaction on climate change could be far more devastating. Shouldn't we prioritize sustainable solutions for the future? This concession acknowledges the business concerns but then skillfully steers the conversation towards the long-term benefits of environmental regulations, aligning with Schoenhauser's core argument. Conclusion. Conceding ground can be a powerful but nuanced tool. By strategically acknowledging some validity in your opponent's arguments, you can disarm them, build rapport, and strengthen your own position. Remember, effective concession fosters a more productive and intellectually honest environment for debate. Remember, don't give away the farm. Concede strategically and use it as a springboard to effectively present your core arguments. Chapter 5: The Masterful Use of Analogies and Metaphors, Painting Pictures with Words. Schoenhauser understands the power of language. He doesn't just rely on logic and facts, he employs analogies and metaphors to paint vivid pictures with words, making complex ideas more relatable and his arguments more persuasive. This chapter explores how Schoenhauser utilizes these figures of speech and how you can craft them for maximum impact. The power of comparison. The human brain thrives on connections. Analogies and metaphors bridge the gap between unfamiliar concepts and familiar experiences. By comparing a complex idea to something the audience already understands, Schoenhauser makes his arguments easier to grasp and digest. Analogies versus metaphors. While both analogies and metaphors involve comparisons, there's a subtle difference. Analogy, an explicit comparison using a like or a as. For example, running a business is like riding a bicycle, you have to keep moving forward to stay balanced. Metaphor, an implicit comparison where one thing becomes another. For example, the company's future is a ship lost at sea without a clear direction. Schoenhauser's toolkit. Schoenhauser uses a variety of analogies and metaphors to suit different situations. Explanatory analogies. These analogies clarify complex concepts. Discussing the intricate workings of the economy, Schoenhauser might compare it to a complex ecosystem where each part plays a crucial role. Emotional metaphors. These metaphors evoke emotions and connect with the audience on a deeper level. Arguing for the importance of education, Schoenhauser might say, education is the key that unlocks a brighter future. Historical analogies. Drawing parallels to historical events can add weight to an argument. Discussing the dangers of unchecked political power, Schoenhauser might compare it to the rise of dictatorships in the past. Crafting effective analogies and metaphors. Here's how to create impactful comparisons like Schoenhauser. Relevance. The comparison should be relevant to your audience's understanding. Don't use obscure references that leave them scratching their heads. Originality. While clichés can sometimes work, strive for fresh and original comparisons that capture attention. Accuracy. Ensure the analogy or metaphor accurately reflects the concept you're trying to explain. A faulty comparison can backfire and confuse your audience. The art of storytelling. Schoenhauser often weaves analogies and metaphors into compelling narratives. He might tell a short story that illustrates his point through relatable characters and situations. This storytelling approach makes the argument more engaging and memorable. A word of caution. While analogies and metaphors are powerful tools, use them with caution. Overuse. Don't bombard your audience with too many comparisons. It can become distracting and undermine the overall message. Mixed metaphors. Avoid mixing metaphors that clash and create confusion. Conclusion. By using analogies and metaphors effectively, Schoenhauser elevates his arguments from mere statements to vivid pictures. By learning to craft these comparisons yourself, you can enhance your communication skills and make your ideas more engaging and persuasive. Remember, comparisons are powerful tools, but choose them wisely. Relevance, originality, and accuracy are key to crafting impactful analogies and metaphors that resonate with your audience. Chapter 6: The Two-Faced Coin of Humor. Laughter can lighten, but it can also burn. Schoenhauser, the master strategist, recognizes the power of humor in arguments. A well-timed joke can disarm tension, make your points more memorable, and even catch your opponent off guard. However, humor is a double-edged sword. When used carelessly, it can backfire and undermine your argument. This chapter delves into the appropriate use of humor in arguments, exploring different comedic styles and the crucial line between humor and offense. The benefits of laughter. Humor offers several advantages in arguments. Disarming tension. A well-placed joke can break the ice, lighten the mood, and create a more relaxed atmosphere for discussion. Improving likability. Humor can make you seem more approachable and relatable, fostering a connection with your audience and making them more receptive to your arguments. Memorable points. Humor can make your points more memorable. People are more likely to remember a funny anecdote than a dry recitation of facts. Catching your opponent off guard. A witty remark can momentarily disarm your opponent, creating an opening to further your argument. Choosing the right humor. Not all humor is created equal. Here's how Schoenhauser selects his comedic arsenal. Self-deprecating humor. Poking fun at yourself can be disarming and endearing. Schoenhauser might use self-deprecating humor to acknowledge a potential weakness in his argument or to deflect tension. Observational humor. Humor based on shared observations can create a sense of camaraderie with the audience. A well-timed comment on the current situation can lighten the mood without derailing the conversation. Witty replies. A clever reply to your opponent's point can be particularly effective. However, ensure it's witty, not mean-spirited. The humor minefield. Humor can be subjective, and what one person finds funny, another might find offensive. Here's how to avoid stepping on toes. Know your audience. Be mindful of your audience's background and sense of humor. A joke that lands with your friends might offend colleagues. Avoid stereotypes. Jokes based on stereotypes or prejudices are not only offensive but also weaken your argument. Read the room. Pay attention to the overall tone of the conversation. If things are already heated, avoid adding fuel to the fire with humor. The power of silence. Sometimes, the most effective use of humor in an argument is knowing when not to use it. If you're unsure about a joke, it's best to err on the side of caution. Silence can be powerful, and a well-timed pause can be more impactful than a forced attempt at humor. Conclusion. Humor, when used strategically and with sensitivity, can be a powerful tool in your communication arsenal. However, remember that humor is a two-faced coin. Always prioritize respect and avoid offensive jokes. By choosing the right kind of humor at the right time, you can effectively navigate arguments without burning bridges with laughter. Remember, humor can be a powerful tool, but wield it with care. Respect your audience, avoid stereotypes, and read the room to ensure your humor lands effectively. Chapter 7: The Art of Listening. Selectively hearing the melody, not the noise. Schoenhauser's mastery of argument extends beyond simply crafting his own points. He is a master listener, but not in the traditional sense. While active listening, where you genuinely try to understand the other person's perspective, is valuable in many situations, Schoenhauser practices a more strategic form, selective listening. This chapter explores this concept, delving into how to identify key points while recognizing weaknesses in your opponent's arguments. Selective listening, a strategic approach. Schoenhauser listens intently, but with a specific goal: to identify strengths and weaknesses in his opponent's arguments. This allows him to exploit weaknesses. By identifying logical fallacies or inconsistencies in his opponent's reasoning, Schoenhauser can craft counterarguments that effectively dismantle their position. Recognize emotional biases. People often base arguments on emotions as much as logic. Schoenhauser listens for emotional appeals and can tailor his response to address those underlying feelings. Identify opportunities. Sometimes, an opponent's argument might inadvertently open doors for Schoenhauser's own points. Selective listening helps him capitalize on these opportunities. Beyond words, body language and tone. A skilled listener pays attention not just to words but also to nonverbal cues. Body language, crossed arms might indicate defensiveness, while open gestures suggest openness to discussion. Schoenhauser uses these cues to tailor his approach. Tone of voice, a condescending tone can put people off guard, while a calm and respectful tone fosters a more productive conversation. Schoenhauser adjusts his tone based on the nonverbal cues he receives. The art of discernment. Selective listening doesn't mean ignoring everything your opponent says. Here's how Schoenhauser practices discernment. Acknowledge valid points. Even if you disagree with the overall argument, acknowledge any valid points your opponent raises. This shows respect and strengthens your credibility. Separate facts from opinions. Not everything your opponent says is a fact. Learn to distinguish factual statements from personal opinions or beliefs. Focus on the underlying message. Sometimes, what's left unsaid can be more revealing. Pay attention to the underlying message your opponent might be trying to convey. Avoiding confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs. Here's how to avoid this pitfall. Be open to new information. Don't enter a conversation with your mind already made up. Be open to the possibility that your opponent might have a valid point. Consider alternative explanations. Don't automatically dismiss counterarguments. Consider alternative explanations for the evidence presented. Evaluate objectively. Set aside your own biases and evaluate your opponent's arguments objectively and critically. Conclusion. Selective listening is a powerful tool in Schoenhauser's arsenal. By strategically listening to identify strengths and weaknesses in his opponent's arguments, he can craft more effective counterarguments and capitalize on opportunities to strengthen his own position. However, remember that selective listening should not preclude open-mindedness and critical evaluation of all arguments. Remember, selective listening is a skill, not a cheat code. Strive to understand the underlying message, acknowledge valid points, and avoid confirmation bias for a truly effective communication style. Chapter 8: The Red Herring Gambit, a smoky mirror in the debate arena. Schoenhauser, the master strategist, isn't afraid to employ even somewhat dubious tactics. One of his signature moves is the use of the red herring fallacy. A red herring is irrelevant information deliberately introduced to divert attention from the main issue at hand, much like the pungent fish used to distract hunting dogs. This chapter explores how Schoenhauser utilizes red herrings and how you can identify and counter them in your own arguments. The smoke and mirrors of distraction. Schoenhauser employs red herrings in various ways to manipulate the conversation. Introducing tangents, he might raise seemingly related but ultimately irrelevant points to derail the flow of your argument and shift the focus. Attacking the person. Instead of addressing the argument itself, Schoenhauser might resort to personal attacks, deflecting attention from the issue at hand. Appealing to emotions, he might introduce emotionally charged topics unrelated to the argument, hoping to cloud your judgment and sway you with emotional appeals. Different flavors of red herrings. Red herrings can come in various disguises. Tu quoque fallacy, you did the same thing. This tactic deflects blame by accusing you of a similar, but irrelevant, action. Strawman fallacy, Schoenhauser might misrepresent your argument, making it easier to attack a caricature rather than your actual position. Appeals to authority, misused, he might cite irrelevant experts or statistics to lend legitimacy to his red herring, hoping you'll get caught up in the details and lose sight of the main issue. Identifying the red herring. Here's how to recognize when you're being subjected to a red herring. Sudden shifts in focus. Pay attention to abrupt changes in the conversation. If Schoenhauser jumps to a seemingly unrelated topic, it might be a red herring. Irrelevance to the main point. Ask yourself, does this new information actually address the issue at hand? If not, it could be a red herring. Emotional appeals out of place. If the conversation suddenly takes an emotional turn that feels disconnected from the argument, be cautious. Countering the gambit. Don't let red herrings derail your arguments. Here's how to fight back. Refocus on the main issue. Politely but firmly refocus the conversation on the original topic. Remind Schoenhauser of the point at hand. Expose the fallacy, calmly point out that the information being introduced is irrelevant to the discussion. Address the underlying motive, optional if comfortable. You can directly address the potential motive behind the red herring. For example, are you trying to distract from the main point? A word of caution. While red herrings can be effective, overuse can backfire. They can damage your credibility and make you appear manipulative. Use them sparingly and strategically. Conclusion. The red herring is a tool in Schoenhauser's arsenal, but it's one to be wielded with caution. By learning to identify and counter red herrings, you can protect yourself from manipulative tactics and ensure your arguments remain focused and effective. Remember, don't get lost in the smoke and mirrors. Focus on the core issue, identify irrelevant information, and refocus the conversation for a productive debate. Chapter 9, The Emotional Appeal, Reason's Partner or Its Puppet Master. Schoenhauser, the argumentative maestro, understands the human condition. Logic and reason are powerful tools, but they don't operate in a vacuum. Emotions play a significant role in shaping our beliefs and decisions. This chapter delves into Schoenhauser's strategic use of emotional appeals, exploring the ethical considerations and how to navigate these appeals effectively in your own arguments. The power of emotions. Humans are emotional creatures. Facts and figures can only take us so far. Schoenhauser understands that effectively appealing to emotions can significantly influence an audience. Heightened engagement. Emotional appeals can make an argument more engaging and memorable. People are more likely to connect with and remember arguments that evoke emotions. Triggering action. Fear of loss, anger at injustice, or hope for a better future can motivate people to take action and support a particular cause. Building rapport. Appealing to shared emotions can create a sense of connection with the audience, fostering trust and receptiveness to your arguments. Schoenhauser's emotional toolkit. Schoenhauser employs various emotional appeals to sway his audience. Fear. He might highlight the potential negative consequences of not following his proposed course of action, tapping into the fear of loss or insecurity. Anger. He might expose injustices or wrongdoings, igniting feelings of anger and a desire for change that aligns with his argument. Patriotism. Appealing to national pride or a sense of duty can be a powerful tool, particularly when discussing issues related to national security or social well-being. Hope and optimism. Schoenhauser might paint a picture of a brighter future if his arguments are adopted, inspiring hope and motivating action. The ethical tightrope. Emotional appeals are powerful, but ethical considerations are crucial. Manipulation versus persuasion. The line between persuasion and manipulation is thin. Emotional appeals should aim to inform and inspire, not exploit vulnerabilities. Accuracy and balance. Facts matter. Emotional appeals should be grounded in truth and avoid exaggerating risks or painting an unrealistically rosy picture. Respect for diverse viewpoints. Not everyone shares the same emotions. Avoid making generalizations or dismissing opposing viewpoints based solely on emotional responses. Identifying manipulative appeals. Here's how to recognize potentially manipulative emotional appeals. Exaggerated claims. Be wary of claims that seem overly dramatic or designed to evoke extreme emotions like fear or outrage. Us versus them framing. Appeals that create a sense of division or demonize opposing viewpoints are often manipulative. Oversimplification of issues. Complex issues rarely have easy solutions. Beware of emotional appeals that paint the situation in black and white. Countering manipulative appeals. Don't be swayed by manipulative emotional tactics. Here's how to fight back. Demand evidence. Ask for evidence to back up emotionally charged claims. Facts are your best defense against manipulation. Consider the source. Who is making the appeal? Are they trying to sell you something or push a particular agenda? Maintain a balanced perspective. Acknowledge the emotions being evoked, but don't let them cloud your judgment. Analyze the arguments objectively. Conclusion. Emotions are an integral part of human communication. Schoenhauser demonstrates the effectiveness of emotional appeals when used strategically and ethically. By understanding the ethical considerations and learning to identify manipulative tactics, you can become a more discerning audience member and craft your own arguments with emotional intelligence. Remember, emotions are powerful tools, but use them with integrity. Strive for a balance between reason and emotion, ensuring your arguments are persuasive and grounded in truth. Chapter 10, The Art of the Concession, Knowing When to Fold them. Schoenhauser, the persuasive powerhouse, isn't afraid to admit defeat. He understands that not every argument can be won, and gracefully conceding defeat can be a sign of strength, not weakness. This chapter explores the art of conceding with dignity, salvaging your reputation, and transforming setbacks into opportunities for growth. The importance of concession. Conceding defeat might seem counterintuitive, but it offers several advantages. Preserving relationships. A heated argument can damage relationships. Conceding gracefully demonstrates respect for your opponent's viewpoint and helps maintain a positive connection. Boosting credibility. Stubbornly clinging to a losing argument can make you appear inflexible and unreasonable. Conceding shows intellectual honesty and strengthens your overall credibility. Learning from setbacks. Every argument, win or lose, presents a learning opportunity. Conceding allows you to analyze your approach, identify weaknesses in your argument, and refine your communication skills for future encounters. The art of graceful concession. Conceding defeat is an art form. Here's how Schoenhauser does it. Acknowledge the opposing view. Verbally acknowledge that your opponent has made a valid point. This shows you've been listening and considering their perspective. Restate your core argument, optional if appropriate. Briefly restate the core of your argument without dwelling on the lost point. This ensures your core message is heard. Pivot and move forward. Don't dwell on the concession. Use it as a springboard to move the conversation forward, perhaps exploring areas of agreement or seeking common ground. Case study: the environmental debate. Imagine Schoenhauser arguing for stricter environmental regulations. After a productive discussion, a well-informed opponent highlights the potential economic drawbacks of some proposed regulations. Schoenhauser might concede. Thank you for raising that point. The economic impact is a crucial consideration. Perhaps we can explore alternative regulations that achieve our environmental goals while minimizing the economic burden. This concession acknowledges the opponent's point, allows for further discussion, and demonstrates Schoenhauser's willingness to find common ground. Learning from setbacks. Conceding defeat isn't the end, it's the beginning of growth. Here's how to turn setbacks into learning experiences. Analyze your arguments. Reflect on the points where your argument faltered. Were there logical gaps? Did you lack sufficient evidence? Refine your approach. Based on your analysis, refine your arguments. Gather additional evidence, address potential counterarguments, and strengthen your overall approach. Seek new information. Perhaps your knowledge on the topic was incomplete. Use the encounter as an impetus to learn more and expand your understanding. Conclusion. Schoenhauser's mastery of argumentation extends beyond simply winning. Knowing when to concede gracefully is a mark of a skilled communicator. By embracing the art of concession, you can navigate conversations with intellectual honesty, build stronger relationships, and continuously learn and grow from every encounter. Remember, conceding defeat isn't a surrender, it's a strategic retreat. Use it as an opportunity to learn, adapt, and emerge a stronger communicator. Expanding the chapters with real-world examples. Chapter 2, The Appeal to Authority, a case study. In a public debate on gun control, Schoenhauser might argue for stricter background checks. To bolster his argument, he could cite a recent study by a renowned criminologist at university name that demonstrates a clear correlation between stricter background checks and a decrease in gun violence. This showcases citing a relevant expert with proper credentials. Chapter 5, The Masterful Use of Analogies and Metaphors, Political Speech Example. During a political speech, Schoenhauser might use a metaphor to illustrate the importance of education. He could say, "Education is the ladder that lifts us out of poverty and unlocks a brighter future." This metaphor uses a familiar concept, a ladder, to explain an abstract idea, the power of education. Chapter 7, The Art of Listening, Selectively Body Language Example. While listening to an opponent's argument, Schoenhauser might notice them crossing their arms and furrowing their brows. Recognizing this defensive body language, he might adjust his approach, using a more conciliatory tone to ease the tension and create a more open atmosphere for discussion. Chapter 9: The Emotional Appeal, a Historical Example. Imagine Schoenhauser advocating for increased funding for scientific research. He might evoke a sense of national pride by mentioning past scientific breakthroughs that have positioned the country as a global leader in innovation.